happened when it happened. Instead, you look at it as, oh, I'm going to go in and discover what's going to happen. So we're now having all these college kids and high school kids go in and try to decide what happened in history. Now, they weren't there 200 years ago. So what are they using as their materials to discover? Well, of course, as we've just heard Huxley said, when you don't give them certain pieces of information, it's a lot easier than having to refute all this information. So what we're doing now is we're giving little smidgens of pieces of information. Let me give you an example. Third grade social studies book teaches kids starting, well, they have different chapters, and it's done by regions in the United States. So you go and you look at the Northeast, and in the Northeast they're going to talk about maybe the Pilgrims, and then a couple of paragraphs later they're going to talk about John F. Kennedy, and maybe a couple of paragraphs later they're going to talk about a baseball team. They jump all through time. There's no chronological order of anything. And it's all little stories here, and this, and this, and this, and this. Then you go do this in the South, in the Southeast, and in the Midwest. And you jump around the United States, and all you've done is had these little pieces of information out of context, out of sequence, out of chronology. So that the child, when he, Randy said, how many people now know how many Supreme Court justices there are, who they are, or just basic facts about our country. They don't learn those things anymore. So that's missing in this whole picture. I call it fractured learning, because what it's done is it's given them just a little smidgen of this, smidgen of that, and then let's go to the math. And again, I know all of you have seen some of the illustrations, and we open our book actually with a picture of one of the mathematical problems. Instead of learning in third grade how you have long multiplication, you go and memorize this thing. You learn these different varieties of ways that you can refigure it. Like Karen mentioned, what is 5 times 3? It's 15. But if you did it in 3s, you got it, and if you got it in 5s, you didn't. The point being that we're not training the kids with the facts to build the base of knowledge. Now, this is important in mathematics, because mathematics is more than just knowing what addition, subtraction, algebra, geometry, and so forth is. It's a way of training the brain. You look at it this way. The brain research shows that when you are learning mathematical facts, you're kind of doing these little gouges of ridges in your brain, of what I call knowledge pathways. And as you go through life, those knowledge pathways deepen, and you deepen that knowledge base. So what you're doing is you're laying down a permanent way of thinking that is logical, analytical, and basically common sense. When you don't teach mathematics that way, you have skipped that. So therefore, our children are not learning to have these thinking patterns in their brains. Then we go to the social studies that I gave you, and we're not giving them any historical context, any kind of sequence, any kind of chronology, so they can't add the dots together. And then those of you, because I think most of you are probably involved somehow in your area of civically Republican-wise or whatever, then you say, why can't they figure it out? Well, duh, they can't figure it out because they haven't been taught. The brain has not been trained to lay down that knowledge base. So consequently, what we're doing is not only with Common Core being the latest wrinkle in this whole thing, but we are destroying the ability of our children to think analytically, to analyze, to be discerning, and then without a moral base, they don't have a base to discern on. And therefore, you go through this whole process, and it's going on across the country. Karen has talked a lot about where we are on some of these things in the federal level, at the state level. When I was down at the State House a couple weeks ago, Missouri also said, oh, we're going to get rid of Common Core. And so we had bought into it like every other state. We had signed a contract for money for something we didn't know. Now, that's not financial responsibility to start.